Digest this stuff.
All right, I'm going to call the special meeting of the Macon County Board of Commissioners to order. And I would like to welcome all of you that are here in attendance today. I guess there's some questions arising of why we're here, so I'm going to give a little background. I wrote up a quick statement before I made my way down today, just to give a little history of where we came from and why we're here today, and then we'll start our discussion. Approximately 2 years ago, we began the due diligence process of studying the needs of Macon Middle School. We hired architects, we hired engineers, we hired financial professionals, we had unanimous support of our Board of Education. We had meetings upon meetings, upon meetings and upon meetings, and finally at our commission meeting earlier this month, we voted unanimously to proceed with the approximately $10 million renovation of Macon Middle School. Following that meeting approximately 2 weeks ago, so between now, a little bit after that time, the Commissioner Young, as our new appointee, as liaison to the school board, called me on my cell, an unexpected call, and he said that he was getting ready to go into his first school facilities meeting with Commissioner Shields, county staff, and I believe some members of our Macon County Board of Education to discuss the upcoming renovation of Macon Middle School. Since Commissioner Shields is a new commissioner, he was just literally getting brought up to speed on what was going to be happening there. Sorry, Commissioner Young. Thank you.
Thank you. No, my fault.
Commissioner Young expressed to me during that phone call that he was having significant reservations about proceeding ahead with that renovation, and he at that time presented a very quick scenario of a different idea. And then he followed that up with me on the phone call, and he had two questions for me. Question number one, is it too late in the process to introduce this idea? And I responded that I do not know, but it may be. He then asked me if he had my support to introduce this concept at this meeting, and I responded by saying that he has my 100% support and to introduce his idea to the group, and to please utilize my name if need be. Following that meeting, Commissioner Young has become even more diligent with his belief that we are making a tremendous mistake by proceeding ahead with the MMS renovation, and that there might be a better solution. I can attest that he has been completely engulfed with his new concept and how it could improve or perhaps help the future of our school system. He has also been in what I personally call commissioner anguish. My fellow commissioners up here will understand that. You see, he's hurting inside. It's because he's worried about being a new commissioner. He's worried about public response. He's worried about the hours and hours and the money that's been spent on this project. He's worried about if he's caused too big of an uproar by creating this new proposal. He's worried about upsetting his fellow commissioners. And, it's something that I deal with often, and again, I refer to it as commissioner anguish. As a newly elected official, Commissioner Young is still very new at how the government system works, but he is full of ideas on how we can make things better, and he obviously has the energy to want to see proceed to chase his concept. I have told him that his idea may not get the support of this board, but we will never know until he presents it to us, and thus we are here today. Commissioner Young, as you know, we are down to the absolute last minute. You have now initiated a very difficult conversation, but an important one, and you thus have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman Tate. Listen, I really appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate the opportunity you placed on me as liaison, and I haven't taken that lightly. I want to make it clear that I'm not here to undermine any of my fellow commissioners, any of the county staff. There have been people working diligently on this process for years. I mean years, countless hours. And it's not my job to walk in here and play Monday morning quarterback and just oh yeah, you guys, whatever, listen to what I have to say. My idea is the best. But I feel like if I kept this inside, that I would have regretted it. So I called Mr. Tate and asked, again, if it's too late to start this process, is it something I can still, try to make happen? And he, as you heard him say, go right ahead. So initially, I had some concerns regarding the Macon Middle School renovation. Okay, I was under the assumption that we were going to get a brand new school. We're going to keep the foundation, keep the footprint, brand new school. 40, 45 years, no problem, good to go. And I made a trip out to the middle school. I did some due diligence on with myself. I started talking to our maintenance staff. I started talking to some people in the community, people who know the history behind that building. And I called a liaison meeting to meet with the school board to address my concerns. So I don't mean to sound harsh, but I asked, I said, are we putting a $10.5 million Band-Aid on our middle school? Secondly, once we get done, we're going to have to turn right around and build an outdoor changing facility. We're going to have a $13 million investment at this middle school. I mean, $13 million on a building built in 1974. So I pitched this idea, and believe it or not, listen, I had overwhelming support from the school board. Okay. So I received an email, okay, doing some more due diligence from some of our firm contractors, people who have been involved in this process. And I want to share with you a section of email. It says here, based on the condition of the roof, the walls, the windows, as well as interior and mechanical systems, MIS, Moisture Intrusion Solutions, strongly recommend replacement of these buildings be considered. While these buildings can be renovated, you essentially would end up with some new components on an old building, and the end result may not be as desired. Cost estimates should be looked into to see what the delta is between major renovation and replacement. Right here.
Who's that
So,
from?
this is from Sean Ferris, Chief Operating Officer, Moisture Intrusion Solutions, out of Daytona, Florida. He was a contractor who was
Did he
hired.
come look at the building?
I have an email right here with this
Did he
statement.
look at the building?
Let me finish this presentation. Right here's his stamp,
Did
and
he
right
look at the
here,
building?
right here's his
I don't
stamp.
care if you stamped it all over, did he look at the building?
It's okay. Let me finish this, and I'll answer all your questions in just a minute. Okay. So Mr. Seeley, the architect, the large contractor, I reached out to him, and he was a fine gentleman. It didn't matter to him. He said, you guys build a new school, if you want to spend $1 million, I don't care. I have nothing to hide. It doesn't matter to me. I said, well, Mark, what's going on? Mr. said, what do we need to do out there? He said, Josh, it takes $30 million to bring that building up to code. $30 million. And I said, okay. I said, he said, I'm willing to work with any budget. Give me $5 million, $10 million, $15 million, we'll make it happen. But he said, there are large problems with that building. He said, Josh, the school doesn't function well. He said, it's not laid out right. It's an old school. He said, there's a lot of wasted space. He said, the plumbing. He said, right now there currently is an issue with the septic and a sewer stack that's not on the scope of the work. Remind you, 45-year-old plumbing. So we started talking about the walls and the construction of the school, and this is what's most important to me. Okay, the exterior walls of the school consist of two widths of masonry. A width of masonry is a continuous vertical section, 1 unit in thickness. Okay, so if you imagine a brick wall, just one layer brick with 3 inches straight up, you have 2 of those tied together with some metal reinforcements with some sort of insulation or styrofoam, who knows, some kind of vapor barrier. He says the school has no thermal barrier, so it's almost like a Coke can. Okay, if the inside of the school is cold, the outside is hot, it condenses. It still condenses. It does today. The metal windows the rotting out of the school. In this proposal, the renovations they do, they address the metal windows. We're going to change out the windows. But the fact is, there's still a root cause causing the problems at the school. There are large structural issues. And so moving forward, he said he recommended 3 solutions. Okay, a good, a better, and a best solution to seal the exterior of the school. All right, he said the good solution pretty much is like a stucco, more or less. The better solution is a brick veneer. The best solution is literally building a new wall. You dig a footer, you build a wall, you build the whole dang school around the school. We have none of the 3 going into our new school. We decline that. So they have a form, okay? It's a checklist to determine whether to renovate the school or replace the school. He said Macon Middle School literally is right on the fence. He says right on the button. But if you think about today's time, 2021, there are 32 points of entry into that school. Okay, schools today are built vertically, maybe in a linear segment. They go up. Mr. Seeley explained to me that he hasn't built a school less than 3 stories. He can't recall when. So now it's, not only is it outdated, you can raise the point of safety. All right, so taking it a step further, last meeting, we talked about commissioner maybe plans or what you want to see happen in the community, and I brought up the high school track. I think it's a liability. I think it's terrible. The middle school track isn't any better. And we had some discussion here with Mr. Beal, Mr. Shields, Mr. Beal and I agree with Mr. Beal. We don't want to put any more money in that track. It's a lost cause. I mean, there's a creek under the track. The DOT turned all the water down on us. I 100% agree. Mr. Shields stressed comments about high school students traveling carpooling to Macon Middle School. I remember when I was in high school, we used to ride in the back of pickup trucks. I explained to these guys in a meeting that I lost all of the catcher gear one time because the tailgate was open. We were trying to save gas money, or so we thought. The bag falls out. We never found it again. So that's a real problem. So I just shown you a lot of problems. How do we fix this? How do we combat an issue? Does anybody have any ideas? So I got to looking at an aerial, a topography map of the county, and I noticed we have a 14-acre parcel adjoining Macon Middle School. So I reached out to the owner, Mr. Drake, and he was in overwhelming support of if this would, suit the county's needs. He'd be honored to let the county acquire this property. So I thought that was really cool of him. So I step back, I look at the soccer field, I look at the site as a whole. Okay, we have a 34-acre middle school, a 14-acre new parcel. I mean, there's 48 acres combined with shared facilities. So I want to share with you, I just mentioned a few property sizes. I'm not going to name the parcels or where they are, but right here I'm going to share with you the properties that the county has previously been looking into for the high school, the new high school that we've been talking about for 13 years, maybe longer. But right here there's a 16-acre parcel, a 33-acre parcel, a 27-acre parcel, a 24-acre parcel. The number one was 63 acres in size, but it was along the Georgia Road, and I think there's a lot of opposition there. So the 4 next properties in line are all smaller than our current Macon Middle School. So I step back and I start looking at a plan, and I'm like, wait a minute. What if there's a way we don't displace students? We come down here, we take that $13 million, we build a middle school, we have the discussion. I'm not a school planner. I want you to understand this isn't what I do. But I think it's worth talking about. So I also asked Mark a couple more questions. We talked for a long time. He said, Josh, we talked about school sizes and cost per square foot. He said we need 150 to 155 square foot per high school student. He said if we anticipate 800 students at the middle school, 1,200 students at the high school, I'm throwing numbers out way premature, but I just want to paint a picture here. Macon Middle School, we're using the number 30. I've heard numbers as low as 22, 25 thrown around the county. Let's say 30 million middle school. But the high school, at the same calculations, is 55.8 million. So it's on a piece of property that we already own. And I feel like we can start addressing a lot of compounding issues. He referred to the high school as a ticking time bomb. I think we all know that. The high school's in 1964. It's 60, 65 years old. So, again, I want to reiterate, I'm not a school planner. I don't think there may be a better piece of property. There may be a better facility that will house all of this. But us, as leaders in the community, I think we owe it to the taxpayers to look down a different avenue, to look down all avenues and make sure we're making the right decision before we spend this $13 million. So let's talk about current needs. Right now, speaking with the school board, we have two elementary schools that need additional space. 2. Estimated repairs, I think the numbers came from Derek, correct me if I'm wrong, Derek, for $3.5 million or thereabouts cost per renovation. Speaking with the school board, if we plan this out right, we can at this point shift all of our grade levels up a grade level, which means we'll have K through 3 in our elementary, a 4-5 at the intermediate, and a 6-7-8 at the middle school. So now we just gain capacity in all of our schools, but being mindful of new construction, we just potentially saved $7 million. But I don't want to be condescending. There is some wasted money if we don't do renovations. Okay, there's $1 million, probably more than $1 million, and countless time and hours. So I'm just thinking out loud that maybe some of the pros may outweigh the cons, and the term throwing good money at bad may come into effect here. So where are the funds? Where's the money? That's the big question. Where are we going to get the money? I want to be very clear that I dislike taxes. I hate taxes. I don't like taxes. I feel like the money isn't spent effectively, and I feel like if we could see it, it'd make me feel better about taxes, but it is a necessary evil. So how is everybody else figuring this out, but yet we seem to not be able to figure it out? You know, I look at Clay County, I look at Jackson County, look at Haywood County 2 times, look at Swain County, a new high school, Cherokee County. It's across state lines, but Rayburn County has probably the nicest facility I've ever seen. Going into to Buncombe, Henderson, they figured it out. And it's our job to figure it out and find a way. Okay? I talked with Derek, and maybe these numbers can back me up and correct me if I'm wrong, but right now we have $30 million, about $30 million in a fund balance in a piggy bank, maybe the high 20s.
It's about 25 million of unassigned.
$25 million in a fund balance. So I feel like we can use a combination right now. If I'm not speaking out of context, we can use a combination of a bond, a loan, and some of our fund balance, and we will not have to even discuss taxes until 2026. It buys us 5 years. And as a commissioner, I feel like there's some hard numbers. I haven't even been through a budgeting process yet. So there's a lot of learning to do. I feel like there's some money we can redirect. Also, look at our economy. I mean, this COVID thing, it's sad, but our zip code, has really been affected for the good. People are wanting to move in. Our revenues are up. Our property sales are up. Sales taxes are up. So, yeah, there's a lot of avenues. I do not want to talk about sales tax. I want to find a way to do this now. But I want to have the time to look into this. I feel like our back's against the wall. And like they said, we're fixing to sell the bond. So I want to talk about, real quick, the track and the football field. And that's probably my largest concern. The children are being neglected. I want to make sure that's clear. There have been 35 track conference championships, 11 running state titles since 1991, 4 state runner-ups, 23 regional championships, 36 individual state championships, 22 cross-country championships, 9 state titles in cheerleading, 1 national title in cheerleading, and we don't even have a track. We have a track, but we're talking about tearing it up, and we don't even know what's going to happen, but there's a creek underneath it, so we don't even know. We don't know what's going to happen. But if we step back and come up with a plan, and that's all I'm asking, is to consider a plan. We go to the middle school, we step back, and we come up with a plan. I say the whole board, the whole school board, We can put a committee together. I really don't like the sound of that because I feel like nothing ever happens. We put committees looking at something, it takes 15 years. Next thing I know, we don't even need the school anymore. They're all doing it virtual. I don't know. But listen, to keep moving forward on some of these points, I don't want to dwell on the bad, but I think it's important. It's not just a football field. It's an athletic facility. Okay, talking about youth athletics. Okay, the youth gets to use it. The Relay for Life gets to use them on Saturday on the weekends. The soccer team, the band team, the track and field. Our wrestling program right now trains at the fairgrounds. Our visiting high school students right now, and this will address that if we vote to pass legislation, but right now our visiting high school and middle school students change on the bus. They change on the bus. Okay, so you have a high school baseball game, well, yeah, just gotta do your thing, you know, we're right here when you get ready. So I want to bring up the point. I feel like we're in reaction mode. Okay, we react to a problem when it arises, but we're not proactive. We don't see these problems arising, or I feel like we're kind of lagging in terms of education. So we've had discussion on the high school the past 13 years. Now, I want to be clear, the high school is sentimental to me. It's sentimental to my family, probably most of the board up here. I mean, I played, Mr. Shields especially. I played ball in that high school field. My daddy played ball there. My son has. It's hard. These are hard decisions. But everything has a lifespan. Okay, nothing lasts forever. All right. Just thinking out loud again, I'm not a school planner, but there's a good chance we could, at some point in time after we built the middle school, consider leveling the middle school and building a new high school right there. So that map, I don't know if it's turned the right way. There's a map in front of the podium, the map that's been on the screen. That map shows pictures, okay? It shows a footprint. And Derek, I can't really see it, but is that the little white? There you go.
Sorry.
So the footprints in the shaded area on top of the new schools or the existing schools, that's a square foot footprint. So I believe for the high school we went 180,000 square feet. Thank you, Paul.
They can right here, Joe.
There we go. All right, so there we go. So the high school has a 60,000 square foot footprint. We go up 3 elevations. Right now our high school currently has 2. That's the footprint of a 180,000 square foot building on the property. Okay, if you go dead south below the softball field on the potential new property, it's a 40,000 acre square foot facility. Go up 3 stories, we're 120,000, I'm sorry, it's 40,000 acre square foot footprint, 120,000 square foot building, 3 stories. And right now I think our current facilities are 103,000 square feet. That whole footprint is 103,000 square feet. So again, I don't mean these images to be deceptive. I'm not a planner. I think, again, what I'm asking for is the time, the due diligence to just look into a bigger plan before we keep throwing 10, 12, 15 million dollars at a school that I'm not so confident that these repairs are really going to fix all the needs. That's a lot of the point of this meeting. So to finish up, what are we going to do with the high school? Now we're going to have a big black hole in the heart of Franklin, and nobody wants to see that. All right, we have to consolidate. All right, Union Academy's probably one of the oldest schools we have on the books. There's room. I think we move Union to the high school. We close down the building. Look, we sell the structure. It's old. It's not our job to maintain all these buildings. I think our maintenance is part of the reason we don't have any money right now. Best of my recollection, South Macon cooks the food for Union. They truck all the food in. It's time. That school is it's a free bleeder. Secondly, we moved the school board. We moved the whole building. Maintenance it all. We move it all. We got to consolidate. We've got buildings everywhere, and so consolidation may help, fund, or maybe we can recapture some revenue. I don't know. Again, I'm just asking that we go down this road and look. So really fast, you're going to hear in just a minute. These documents right here show us that look, we're in a position right now that we risk a losing point or losing a percentage on our interest rate. Okay, we risk losing the percent we're locked in at, or the estimated rate that we have right now. Secondly, we risk a contract with our builders. I mean, it's about to expire. It's we had 3 bids. The bids came in way below what we thought. We added some more work or some more scope onto that. So I'm sure we could take back off. We could readjust is what I'm saying. I think it's important that we at least take the time to consider a bigger plan, a bigger picture before we keep throwing money, just, you know, big wounds, Band-Aids on really big wounds. So I asked that we can get together, the school board commissioners. I think the taxpayers would appreciate us taking a step back and just reevaluate. All right. I worry right now if we spend the money on the middle school. We'll hear the numbers in just a minute, but you know, it's 50, 60, 80 million dollar high school. Look, when are we going to fix the track? Like, when are we going to have the money to? Like, when are we going to have the property? We've been looking for this property since 2000. I know 2008, but I've heard a lot longer than that. So once we spend the money on renovations, once we build the new outdoor changing facilities, you can take this plan and throw it out the window. It's gone. We spent the money. It's over with. And that's my urgency. That's why I called this meeting. I had this stuff I wanted to get off my chest. I'm sure, listen, we're going to have some big problems on that plan. Right now, the DOT is actively pursuing a fix to the traffic problem. We have a major traffic problem out there right now. So again, this is a potential plan. It's a staging plan. This isn't going to happen right away. Hopefully it's a 10-year plan. Maybe it's less, maybe it's more. We talk about referendums. Who knows? We could talk about a lot of different scenarios. But it's going to take time for the state, for the county, for everybody to work together on that plan. There's a proposed new access. It comes straight from the roundabout right to the 3 new schools. That will be our 5th point of access. I think we'll use that to our advantage. Again, I'm sure I've thought about this for weeks. Like I said, I struggle to bring it forward because I don't want to walk in here and act like I'm Mr. Know-It-All, and here I am. But I thought that if I would have held it in, I would have regretted it. I think the taxpayers deserve us looking into this, and all I'm asking from you gentlemen is just to take a deep breath. Let's not cancel our renovations. Let's not postpone them longer than what we feel comfortable. Right now, today, I've spoken with the school board. They're willing to give us time. We have time. They're not in any imminent rush. There are big problems, but we're not underwater. They're keeping us afloat. So let's take 6 months. Let's take a small period of time. I think the taxpayers understand if our bonds go up a little bit or materials go up a little bit or there's some extra cost, I think they'll step back and say, you know what? They're looking out for us. They're working on it. And, you know, they'll have some confidence. Right now, one of the reasons I ran is because I feel like nothing ever happens in government. It takes so long. You talk about all this stuff, you hear about it, and I shared that with the school board. It's a little bit frustrating, just to be honest with you, because you hear all this talk, and I just want to start finding real solutions to real problems. I think this is a potential. I'm not dead set on this plan. I just think we spend some time, spend a little bit of money, spend a little effort, and see if it works, and see if this is what, you know, the taxpayers would appreciate from us. So thank you for your time.
Any questions? I'm gonna grab a water from you, like one.
Yeah, Diet Coke and a hamburger.
All right, I know there's a lot to discuss, and Josh just took 20 minutes to describe what he gave me in 2 minutes on the phone when I gave him my backing to proceed, because I thought it was an idea of merit, and as my Appalachian twang wants to say, it might be a good rabbit to go chase. So again, I give him that, and he's given that, and it seems like the more he digs into it, the more it starts to make sense, and I can appreciate that. I do have a background in land planning. That's what my degree's in. So I understand where he's going, and I understand how important having a plan is for our county. I mean, how do you know where you're going to go home this afternoon if you don't have a plan on how to get there? So I can appreciate that. I mean, I could sit here and list a whole page of questions I have about just immediately from how you pay for it, number one. How much would it cost if we do put a delay on this project for 30 days? How big of a delay will this put on other projects that we need to handle, such as a jail expansion, such as senior services? If we handle this with all new buildings, so we start putting Band-Aids on something else? They're very, very, very tough questions, and it's times that I mentioned the term commissioner anguish earlier. It's the reasons that I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and don't go back to sleep, because I start worrying about are we as commissioners doing the best we can with the money that we have for our constituents. And make no mistake, our kids are our most important asset in this county, and I think it's up to us to take care of them. But I am in support of Josh's thoughts. I am in support of moving forward with some type of a plan and setting some type of direction. I know we have been talking about this all the time, but for a long time, but I think it's time maybe we investigate a little bit deeper. And, I'm interested to hear some of the other individuals' thoughts in here and see if we can. It's just a problem. How do we find a solution to it? And, I'm happy to be open-minded and discuss it. Seems to be an important topic based upon the emails and texts I've received the past few days. Seems to be catching streams.
Yeah.
Anyway, my email hadn't been this busy since the Second Amendment was under conversation. So.
Let's do a better job on this.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chairman, I think it's important that we go back and look at the history. The liaison committee started with the school board about 15 years ago when former Senator Davis and I became the liaisons to the school board. And during the past time, I don't know if Commissioner Young has not been able to keep up, but I think we've done more as far as across the county of any school system without tax rates hikes. We built, just right offhand, we built 2 new schools. We totally renovated Union Academy, not to mention the work in the gyms, the work in the schools. Have you got that number, Ben Chester? Of how much we spent in the last 15 years on the schools?
Well, in the last 10, outside of the capital outlay and annual operating, we've spent about $25 million
So,
in the last 10 years.
and so during these liaison committee meetings, anything that would come up, that's right, it takes so long to do anything. Now, for it to come to the new high school, Lord, we've had that conversation. We even agreed, both boards even agreed on the piece of land to put it on. But we can't go in the real estate business with that kind of money. When you're talking, I don't know where the $55 million come from. You call any county that's built a high school in the past 10 years, and they'll tell you what it costs to build a high school. I think we're looking more in the 90 million range, easy, or 100. So, and that's the numbers we had a long time ago, was that kind of money. So, what that's going to mean is a huge tax hike. This board is not inclined to do that, so that means you put it to a referendum. I think we all know what happens when you put to a referendum. So, are we elected to make that decision? That's the decision this board has to make. As far as the middle grade school goes, we look at every avenue. Some of the things that Commissioner Young, and I do appreciate Josh looking at these things, and I think new ideas are wonderful. But unfortunately, these are things we've already looked at. About everything Josh mentioned. We've talked about the land that Mr. Drake has now acquired before he acquired it. Unfortunately, it's in a swamp. And most of that land is not usable for what we would want. We've talked about the middle grade school and what we should do. It's took 2 years to get to the point, and what our people tell us with these renovations that we're about to do, that we should get decades more use out of that school. Now, as that school constructed, we've had the principal of the school, we've met with them over the years. We have addressed some of the security issues in this new construction. There are too many points of entry. But the way that school's designed, it certainly would be designed when we build the one that Josh is talking about now. That would not be the design of the school. But I think over time that you have new people and new ideas. After Mr. Davis came off the board, I believe it was me and Brian McClellan that assumed that responsibility of the liaison board, and then me and Mr. Shields. And then, but during that time, we've always had a good relationship with the school board. They know that that the money we spend is the biggest part of our pie is to the school system, where it shouldn't be. That's the state's responsibility, but they don't keep up with that too well. Had it not been for the work of our finance department and the work that they put in to do the renovations, but I think Josh has but when you start looking down the road at a new high school, we went through everything. We went from putting the high school where it is now, doing it in sections. Jim remembers that well. Tying it from the front to the back, doing new property, the grading, the new football fields, the new gyms. We've been down all those roads. And until now, Mr. Chairman, nobody has really had the desire to see a 40 or 50% tax increase to the people of Macon County, because ultimately that's who has to pay for it. That's who's doing this renovation, is the people of Macon County. So I think that the work that we put in, the experts we've all talked to, the times that for years we've seen what to try to get the prices down, because we do have other things on the burner, a lot of other things. And we don't have, and it sounds like a huge amount of money, that 30 million has took decades to make that fund balance where it is. That just didn't happen in 2 years. It's took decades of pretty good judicial responsibility of this board for a lot of years. So, Mr. Chairman, my thought is, I think that Josh's ideas should have some merit. I don't think the middle grade is a place for a high school. That place can never stand that congestion. The DOT has looked at some things, but nothing's in the burner, nothing's in the works. I think that for now, I mean, the best that we can do, we can't afford to lose $1 million and postpone this thing, kick the can again, and that's all you'll be doing, because what we don't realize, in 30 days we're not going to get nothing done. 6 months is tough. And I'd like to ask Lori Hall to speak, and I think, and the county manager, of what we've went through to get this thing to the LGC the way it is now. Not to mention, now when you start talking about a new high school and all the things to consolidate like we did the other schools, there's folks on this board that didn't even want to consolidate the old schools. Golden Sage, all them old schools, which we really would have been in a pickle had we not. But I think to say that this board has been lax in supporting the schools and the new construction of whatever they need is just absolutely not true. I think this board has proven to do whatever it takes to take care of our schools and in construction and personnel as far as that goes. So that's where I'm at, Mr. Chairman. I support we move ahead with the renovations as outlined that this county's worked 2 years on. It'll give this community several decades to get ready and a new high school. Am I saying it's not needed? No, sir. Anybody on that school board would tell you I've always been a proponent. But you got to have the money. And there's only one place to get the money, and that's out of the pockets of the citizens of Macon County. And we've just not had the will. I've never seen nothing from the school board asking us to raise taxes by 40-50% to build a new high school. I've never seen anything from them saying that. This board, I don't think I don't have that in my radar to raise that kind of taxes. We don't know where the school system is even going. The superintendent will tell you. We don't know what schools are even going to look like in 10 years. This COVID thing has changed the way education works. It's changed the way everything works. We hope it comes back to when we can go to football games, maybe tonight, maybe. But it's changed a lot. We don't know what school's going to be, but we do know what we got to do, and that's preserve what the Macon County people have invested in, and they have invested in a middle grade school. And over the years, we have put some money into it, but not to this extent. Is this late getting done? It sure is. but have we not, it's not because of negligence, it's not because we wasn't trying. We have worked on it continually for several years. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I do appreciate Commissioner Young's sight into the future. I think that's important to have. But I think at this point down the road, we've all had a vote, we've all had an opportunity. I don't think we'll be losing a penny, because in 10 or 12 years or whenever this could be, that's a long time off. And in government years, that's probably 20 or 30. So I would support us moving ahead as planned. The only thing I would add, and I'll certainly be quiet, Mr. Chairman, is I would definitely support, for one thing, since our bids came in much better than we anticipated, I would support that athletic, that we already have the athletic building at middle grade, we already have the plan for. We've already got general quotes, right, Mr. Manager? And I would certainly include that in this renovation and build that athletic facility, because Josh Young is exactly it. It's embarrassing to change clothes on the bus. We played football in Robbinsville, Little League football. We had to do the same thing. That's been a few days ago. So I would, Mr. Chairman, certainly support that at this time. But Mr. Chairman, also, we've got to look down the road. Here's the fastest growing section of our county is senior citizens, by far. Not students, it's senior citizens. And that don't look like it's going to change in the near future. That don't mean we neglect the children, but it also mean we don't neglect our senior citizens. And there's a lot of the sheriff is sitting back there. The sheriff will tell you there's a lot of things. I've been fortunate enough to be his liaison for a number of years, and there's a lot of things that we've had to kick the can down the road and worried out, Sheriff, doing that. So EMS, does EMS need a new full station? Yes, they do, tomorrow. They need a new EMS station tomorrow. There's so many needs in our county, so you have to prioritize of what you're going to get the most bang for your buck up right now. And our finance office, our county manager, done a wonderful job of putting these bids together. That's one of the reasons they came in so low. Yes, it took 2 years, but because of the work of our superintendent and the school board, working with our county manager and our finance director, that's one of the reasons we got good prices. So I think at this point in time, in the future of our county, Mr. Chairman, we could not make a better decision than to do the renovations at middle grade. But I'd also love to have a conversation real soon, because that money can come out of fund balance, and do that athletic facility at middle grade at the same time, because we were so worried about our budget, where it's going to come in, our sales tax numbers. This board don't have no desire, I think I can speak for myself and some others I've talked to raise any taxes. Our revaluation's coming, folks, and it's coming soon. Your taxes are going to be raised whether you want them or not. That's what's going to happen, because the reval, sell the property Commissioner Young talked about, you're going to see our reval change our tax rate to make us revenue neutral. So with all those items coming up, we have a chance to make this a more quality place for educating the children at the middle grade. And I think we'd be foolish to discard this work and the programs we've got, especially the price that we have, Mr. Chairman. So with that, I'll make my position known that I think we should go ahead with our renovation. I do think it's a great idea for the school liaison committee and the school board to bring this board proposal, but when you're talking about designing and putting a high school, we done found out it takes years. It takes a long time. And you hear Josh mention these other counties. Simple how they've done it. They raise taxes. So that's how, as far as over to reservation, of course, it's Fed money. Different world. But these other counties that built the new schools, Johnston County's building, I think they built 8 new high schools in the past 4 years. All of them average about 130 million. So, but it takes, we don't have the population. The majority of our population being senior citizens, tax rates are very important. It's very important to us all. So With that, Mr. Chairman, I will be quiet, but my support is that we go ahead with it as planned, and I would love to see us include the athletic facility at the middle grade school.
Mr. Young and I talked quite a bit about positions on things, and he knows where my position is. I've shared it with him. I know where his position is. My position is to continue with the project as we've developed here over the last 2 years. The referendum, what my understanding is, when you, 2022, you can get a reading on the county of how they feel about taxes and stuff like that, capital outlay type things, by having a referendum. Now, we had planned to put something on a referendum for the 2020, because you have to go in the even number of years. And when you do that, it gives us a readout on what that is. I'm for the planning. Now, Mr. Young knows this. High school on Macon Middle School campus, as I vision, is not a good idea. 300 more cars on Wells Grove and Clark Stepper Road, and their students, you're in for a mess. Yeah, I hear what he says about, and I've looked on the map about that other entryway area, but you're still putting that much congestion and safety within that arena. I think in this planning thing, the one thing we should look at is inviting the parents. When you start saying you're going to put a high school on Macon Middle School campus, invite the middle school parents, invite the Macon MVI parents, what kind of congestion they're dealing with now, and see if they're open to 300 more cars with teenagers in them. And you're building, and that's the people in the community there. So I'm not against the middle school concept. It's just, if you start delaying things now, grass be growing under your feet. We need to go ahead and do something. When Dr. Baldwin talked to Mr. Bill and I a couple years ago, and then Mr. Madison took us over and showed us around the school, people in the school about to implode. It's terrible. So I'll use Mr. Young's word, a Band-Aid. And I know what Mr. Hickman did in the military as a medic. Sometimes instead of bleeding out, that Band-Aid's good. And some kind of tourniquet, some kind of something you put on. And that Band-Aid is not a permanent thing, but it can stabilize something till you get somewhere else, all as a medic. You understand what I'm talking about. And I guess from my position, I'm trying to stabilize something. I'm like Mr. Young and some of the, I'm scared when we delay something. But I'm not sure when it comes back up. A plan, yes. You can't go from here to the beach without some kind of plan, GPS or something. You got to have something. But if you start delaying it, then we're in trouble. One thing that Mr. Young and I have talked about now, we talked a long time yesterday, and I encouraged him to present his position, right or wrong.
Yes, sir.
That's what we're about. We're in the United States of America. But also, I was going to present my position. But that's what this is about, the whole thing here. We're not dictators or something, but this is what we're about. But in the planning part, I'm 74 years old, Lord have mercy. Okay. I may not see what, but what I guess I'm dealing with now is in the moment. And what Mr. Maslin and Dr. Baldwin and Mr. Talent has shown us, let's say 2 years ago, this is the best Band-Aid I've got at a reasonable price. Now, when you start talking about $30 million, stuff like that, you're losing Gary Shields. That's a lot of money. But I think there is a time to check that, to see if your community's with you, is in 2022. Put that referendum out there. See what the appetite is. But I'm not sure we want to wait 2 years in order to miss this opportunity. And so I said it, I made the motion before. I am for the renovation at Macon Middle School. In planning, I'm for it. And I'll, gosh, that's a slow train. But I'm for it. But I don't want the school to bleed out while we're doing this. And I refer back to Mr. Hickman. I know what his military part was. You got to put a Band-Aid on something, or that won't be around. And it's just, and we're in a dire situation. And here's the other thing that's, Mr. Young brought it up. What y'all don't see is the space needs analysis piece that I've got here. We did this study 2 years ago, on what we hired a mostly architect company, came in and said, look, we're going to look at your properties, your capital properties, and see what you get, what you need to ditch, what you need to upgrade, what you need to rebuild some things. And when you look here and you talk about, I don't know where Mr. Holland went, Sheriff Holland went, but you look at those people, they have needs too. And so, as a commissioner, I've had the emails too, that I don't care about kids anymore. Well, obviously you don't know me, so I don't worry about you. But when I got on this board, I'd been with Dr. Baldwin 4 years as a board member, or 3 years and 1 year with Dr. Baldwin. I was just like Josh. I came in here thinking, I'll have a new high school by this summer. What was another dumb thing? And it doesn't work that way. And to see what I spent 21 years at Franklin High School, and see it deteriorate, see that football field, see things like that, people, that hurts. But one thing that I learned working with this group, this county has a lot of needs. Here, I'm picking on Paul today.
Yeah, big boy.
You are. And Nantahala, I think about Nantahala, and the people that work there. We got to do something about that place over there. And this is something that's important. They are part of Macon County too. And I'm going to say this, not intentionally, but I think they've been neglected. I think we're headed back to helping that. But it's on here. It's in here. And so, do you spend $30 million and kill this year? I can't do that with good conscience. So I'm a band-aid man. I'm just trying to keep the Macon Middle School from bleeding out. But I do understand what Mr. Young is talking about having a plan. And that's all I've got to say. I'll support, I made the motion last time to continue on with the middle school project, and I haven't changed my mind that. But the planning part, I'm with Mr. Young. But an immediate need, I need to start bleeding out of the middle school. Thank you very much.
All right, Paul. Well, thank y'all for coming today. I think this is a very important topic. And I push for a capital improvement plan. I think when I sat on this board, got on it 8 years ago, and it's not because of me, it's everybody wanted this, you gotta have a plan. And I have seen a lack of a plan in overall education, not pointing fingers to any particular individual. It's when I first came on this board, in one of the first meetings we had, we've got to build a new high school. It's going to be $75 to $100 million. We've already found the land. Wait a minute, guys. Wait a minute. What? How does this fit into the overall plan? Why do we need it? How will it improve education? The building's old, let's build a new one. Well, I started opposing it right then. I oppose it today because there is no plan. There's no overall plan. And Josh and I have talked a couple of times on this. I don't do a lot of phone calling or backdoor dealing, but Josh and I have talked a couple of times on this. And what has impressed me is his youthful vigor in education. And I strongly support this plan. The second thing he's talked to me about is consolidation. Typically, this government is spread out all over the county, and there's good to that. It prevents that too many cars in one place or whatever. Congestion. But his ideas, and I think some of the school board too, on consolidation intrigues me very much. It's and this thing of, I've heard about the high school track before I came on this board, bubbling too small, can't help. Well, what are we doing? We're talking, we're getting ready. We're getting ready. Well, I'm in your 8 years, going on 9. We're not ready yet. But how long do we do this? How long do we put it off? And I'm not opposed to new facilities as long as they mesh, as long as it improves education, improves educational opportunities. I think, and I appreciate the work that's been done into this, and boy, so I've heard the number, we got $1 million invested in this proposed renovation already. Man, I'd hate to see that gone. What does the new facility you're talking about, Ronnie,
The athletic facility,
Yeah.
it come in at 1.4, I think.
Athletic outdoor.
But at the middle grade school.
so what's the total ticket for that?
About 1.4, wasn't it?
1.4.
Those were very informal. They were just.
Yeah,
we didn't do
that was
anything
back.
Informally, you remember when COVID hit, we made a decision early on that was originally in the original scope of the architect contract with SGA Narmore Wright. When we got into the planning process with the school system and county administration, we removed that building from the scope of SGA Narmore Wright, and then we had a local architect, Mr. Tom Ritter, draw up those plans. Now, as far as receiving any bids formally on those plans from any contractors, we have not.
Okay.
We
So it's
pulled
going,
it from there.
Because of the money.
it's going to be, so the overall, we're going to be at,
1.4.
yeah.
That was the guesstimate then.
I guess, so 1.4, 1.5.
And that's
plus-
pretty good.
Plus what we
price.
voted on was 8 to 10,
10.5.
10.5.
Total project cost.
so 12 is what we're going to be at, possibly.
If we do that, let's.
If we do that and proceed. So, and the information that we've gathered now from about the condition of that building, I understand there's no waterproofing being included in the scope
That's
of
the first
work.
I'd ever heard of that. I don't know.
That's the first I've
That's the
heard.
first I ever heard of it, so it's what Josh described, that there's no barrier. We know why the windows were leaking, it wasn't placed.
Well, the architect
They would
said there's
never
an
been-
interior wall of brick and an exterior wall of brick with a void between them.
That is your airspace.
And the gutters run through that void, the gutter collection
That's
system.
going to be corrected in the renovation.
Okay, and then there's some plumbing, apparently sewer water drains in that void that are,
If the architect, Mark Seeley, he's he's available by phone right now for any, all we have to do is call his number and you can talk with him, any of the particulars that you have as far as what's going to be done in this renovation. So if y'all want to do that, I can certainly call him right now.
so we're gonna put conceivably 12 million in this project. What would a new middle school cost?
Estimates that we've received are $30 million roughly around, and that's construction only. That's not, you're talking about, you got to buy property. So it would be, right 31, 32. And again, that's just, it's an unknown. It's an unknown at this point because we've not went through the process. We don't have plans. We haven't had those plans looked at and evaluated by an architect. So 30 million is what we're seeing and what in consulting with design professionals would be what we feel comfortable budgeting for the cost of construction at this point without having any.
Did Mark share anything with you on middle school cost?
I'm sorry, as far as, so there are numbers, and I would like to refer to the school board and a few other people. There's a lot of different numbers, and that's kind of where I'm like, I've heard 70 million on a new high school, 100 million, I heard 140 million, I've heard 50 million from Mr. Shilley. I put those numbers together based on his square footage and estimated cost today. And as Derek shared with me, right now, building costs are through the roof. They're crazy, they're going up, they're high. But not this type of construction. This is in a lag. Am I right, Derek?
Yes.
This type of construction, we anticipated 12 million, our cost came in at 8. Who knows? Like, we don't have any hard numbers. Throwing numbers out the school board, we've heard 22, 25. Like, nobody really knows. We've talked this over. Again, I'm going back to, let's just take a little more time and see. Let's just see. Who really knows what the costs are, We have estimates from years and years ago. The price has gone down.
What bothers me is if we do this renovation, we've still got the same issues with security, the same issues with building sprawl. That thing's spread out like a spider over there. Is it practical to look at building a new middle school on that property that we have, leaving the old building? And then when we get down to the point of doing a high school, do it on the joining, if that whole project's feasible.
So I wanted to respond to Mr. Bill, that property he was talking about, it's on the list of high school potentials, and it was not suitable for a high school. So I think it was due to size. And right here, there is some floodplain issue. There's a small creek on there. Look, there's some due diligence to do on that property. It's not a perfect fit. It's not going to work right away. Again, I'm just saying these are potential options that have not been discussed. And again, I'm not asking to terminate plans. I'm just asking that we just take a small period of time. And I don't want to extend this. If we decide that we can't go through with a plan or this plan or a plan, let's renovate the middle school. But a few months isn't going to hurt anything. We're not going to lose the money if we just take a deep breath. Just tap the brakes. I'm not ripping this contract and throwing it away. Just let's stop. Let's back up a minute and look at this picture from a different perspective. Let's talk to the community, like Mr. Shields says. I would love to hear from Clark's Chapel. I feel like I've been hearing from them, and what I'm hearing, I'm not going to speculate, but I would love to, and that's part of the due diligence I'm talking about. Let's do that. Let's hear from them.
I can respect what you say, and I think that's part of the due diligence. But being here for this is my 6th or 7th year, when you delay something 6 months, when we only meet once a month and then trying to connect with each other, middle school in the renovation that we put together at this time will be 6 more months of bleeding out. We're going to have to deal with this middle school, either in the renovation part, or you're looking at waiting on a referendum to see the people will support a new middle school. We're just finding ways to delay something. I feel like that the renovation, it may cost us something, but to give up $1 million study that we've already done, me personally, I have a hard time with that. I just don't want the county to look and say, well, 6 months now, then roll out something else, we do another $1 million study. Then Josh is my former student, former football player, and I look at this and we compare analogies on sports. We're in the fourth quarter. We're in the fourth down, inches to go, and the team comes off the field. And I can't deal with that just coming off the field. That, to me, that's what I envision that we're doing. We're leaving the field without playing that last few yards. And they need something over there. And I'll still go back to Mr. Mazin. The walkthrough was shocking to me. And I feel an obligation to do that renovation and get this thing moving. Hey, study, let's do it. Let's see what we can do better. But I just feel like a need to do something now in order to justify this study, justify this $1 million. And I think the economy will support us at this time from an economic standpoint. I don't know what's down the road. We're in a pandemic time. We do not know what's down the road. I don't know. And but when Mr. Young talks about tracks, high school and middle school, hey, I'm with you. Let's talk about that. But delaying something is just what you're doing. You're delaying it. And I just don't see us having the energy sometime or the get it fired back up. It just really hurts. Yeah.
Go.
I mean, would you guys be interested to hear from the school board? Would you gentlemen be interested to entertain a delay?
We've talked for 15 years. I think we're pretty good.
Well, if they would consider a delay, I would be interested in hearing from them.
We've been through a lot of
I mean,
budget meetings, but never a meeting to discuss an educational plan.
I don't want to really mess something up if this is the direction you guys don't want us to go down. So just please.
The school board voted unanimously to proceed with this as we did, so unless something's changed at the school board.
Just the liaison committee and the discussion we had last week. But going back to the educational plans, we have identified several properties for a high school. We've identified plans for constructing a new high school on site. We have plenty of plans that I'm willing to share at any point.
Yeah, they never gotten to all members of the board. This list of potential, I've heard of one property that we're
Not true.
getting. Pardon?
So we did talk, that's come before this board.
When?
2 or 3 times when we had the plans available for the property, I know we had a closed session on that. The property.
What do you think? Is it a bad idea in education to consolidate?
It depends on what you mean by
Would the middle
consolidation.
school and the high school compound could that be a possibility?
I think that the proposal that Mr. Young has presented certainly has merit. I think it needs to be considered. There's what we see with the plans that have been proposed and presented to this point. We're certainly pleased that we're considering, as Mr. Schultz pointed out, stopping the bleeding at Macon Middle School. He's exactly right. That building is about to implode. There's some serious issues over there, as there are at the high school.
As we had at the high school for 12 years.
Exactly. Mr. Young's proposal addresses the issues that we have at Macon Middle School. It addresses the issues we have at Franklin High School. It addresses, as he pointed out, the concerns that we have moving forward at the 2 elementary schools. We know that we're going to have to add space due to the K-3 class size legislation. His plan also addresses the known needs with regard to the athletic facilities at Franklin High School. Those things, we can't pass up the consideration of that type of proposal.
Well, I think it's like everybody's
And
mentioned.
I speak for Mr. Chairman of the board right here with us, so I don't want to step on his toes.
Paul's come a long way. He was against even closing down Coggins State School, voted against the budget because of it. So Paul's come a long way.
When did that happen? Right?
You voted against 3 budgets.
I did.
And you didn't want to, because you said the schools need to stay where they're at. We need community schools.
Yeah, I support the community school.
Yeah.
Times
So I'm glad
change,
you've come a
right?
long way.
Times change, exactly. The more you
You've
learn
come a
about.
long way.
I didn't know that these buildings were rotting down. We we got one there bad, let's throw $3 million in it and fix it. Oh, we got another one here.
That's right.
Now here comes,
And we've kept up with the plow pretty good.
we have. But has it been-
Haven't we, Dr. Baldwin kept up with it pretty well?
Yes, sir.
I'm not opposed to a new facility, but it's got to be part of the plan. Just this jumping here and yonder. So I know we're into this thing, this proposed expansion, but I'm certainly in support of Josh's recommendation. Let's take a deep breath. Let's meet every night if we have to. Let's get the community involved. I think that's wrong. We do meet once a month. A lot of times, one commissioner don't know what another liaison committee, had I known this building was seeping moisture into it, there's got to be a mold issue somewhere. I hadn't even heard that mentioned. But there's got to be a mold issue if these, if.
I know nothing about none of this stuff that y'all are talking about till Mr. Young went to school. I knew nothing about none of it.
Had I known about that, I wouldn't have voted to proceed.
I knew nothing of this plan until Mr. Young went before the school board.
I speak because I'm the liaison. I brought it forward, Mr. Bill. I brought the plan forward myself. Not myself.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know nothing about
Well, this
that.
plan, I just want to be clear. This
I know
plan,
it took us 2 years to get this far, You can imagine all the other stuff that he just rattled off. Long way off.
Well, let me clarify what the Board of Education did for all the commissioners. Mr. Young, who is our liaison at our last meeting, which is the first one he attended, he asked us, would we, as a board, go against his, if he came to y'all and asked for an extension of time to reconsider the project. Now, what he asked us to do was to answer that question, and that's what we did. The board met, we have no objections, we understand there's time, there's essence in time, but if there's a better alternative, which is what I think Mr. Young feels there is and wants to discuss, then we are not about to start pounding and saying, oh, no, we've got to get something done, we've got to get something done now. So what we meant and what we said, and I think I sent an email to Mr. Tate explaining, our board simply said, we're open. If y'all as a board choose to wait a little while and relook at this project, we support that wholeheartedly. Because our whole plan is, gentlemen, we just want what's best for our children. That's all we're here for. That's what the Board of Education, I think, is what y'all are here for. So hopefully that clarifies, Mr. Shaglin, your question is, we're not pushing one plan or the other. We're simply answering questions you might have of us and trying to work with you for what comes out to be the best plan that we can come up with.
Let me just say something on Mr. Higgins' thing there. One of the major reasons that I went to the middle school to do the walkthrough, and I think Mr. Bill was there, was this mold. It's still there.
But just in one section,
Yeah, back there in that south side.
in the
It's still
music
there,
room.
Still there.
But we will know for sure exactly what we have until we get into it, I think. So
Right.
we're a little bit premature in saying there's this or there's that. Am I right, Tracy? Because until we actually get in there and get something known and look underneath the surface, we have no way of knowing that. But we do very much suspect there's some remediation that's going to be done in that bottom part, most certainly, yes.
And I believe there was when I looked at it, there was a discoloration within the wall.
Yes, there are. You're leaking calcium out of your masonry now in that band area like Mr. Bill was talking about, and also in the, what we used to call the 8th grade wing. There's several spots in that wing as well.
Yeah. The only thing I can say again, I'm repeating myself, it's bleeding out, Paul. You're a medic.
Bleeding in, bleeding out.
You're a medic, need a Band-Aid, if renovation's Band-Aid, it's a salvage at the moment. I don't say that's a long-range plan, I just say it's a plan that we can make that building over there more safe to have students in. During this pandemic time, might have a little bit more free time to work. But if you delay this for 2 years, you talk about 6 months, somebody's gonna want to delay it till we get the referendum to see if we got support for a tax increase. If you don't,
What concerns me, now that we're talking about consolidating the high school and middle school compound, is if we go over there and we put $10 or $12 million into a sprawling building now, does that impede or interfere with that concept of combining the high school with facilities, the track, whatever, into one compound? We still got, we've dumped 12 million into this, we still got an old sprawling building with serious security issues. So I'd hate to spend $10 million to kill an ideal piece of property and concept that's been brought up here. And I appreciate Josh's approach to this, man. This youthful mind is something. And I don't have a problem with supporting. Had I known all these issues, particularly this mold and moisture issue, and saw the document that Josh found that the liaisons didn't even know about, I would have voted no on this renovation. I was hesitant. I didn't have enough information last time I voted, but my fault. But I appreciate what Josh is doing here, this idea he's got. And I don't have a problem with voting to postpone for a reasonable length of time. Sure, it's going to cost us money, a lot of labor into this thing. Hopefully everybody's getting paid for their time on working on this. I think it's a worthy pursuit. How this affects the capital improvement plan, those are issues we got to deal with. But education is important. If we have rotten, run-down buildings,
I would like to make note the capital improvement plan did not discuss school buildings. It didn't even go over them. So we can go over all the plans. They didn't even see the 1964 high school, 1974 middle school. I feel like if they would have been, likely would have been a priority. But
and Gary mentioned that.
Jack, you want to address that?
This project, the Macon Middle School renovation project, was first brought to the county's attention by the school system in October of 2017. At this time, the county put it into the county's capital improvement plan. At this time, the school board estimated this renovation project to be about $2.7 million for a complete renovation. So that's what they provide. Again, the school board, we solicit that from them. They provide their needs back to us. So in May of 2019, following the inclusion of this project into the capital improvement plan for the county, we contracted with Novus Architecture. And Novus Architecture, as you'll recall, that we've worked with them on numerous other school projects. They conducted a building assessment of the Macon Middle School. And in this report, in the summary of this report, it says, in general, this building has been well cared for and is in good to fair condition. With recommended renovations, the building could continue to serve the school system well for years. So that was in May of 2019. Now, in August of 2019, the school board approved the RFQ for architectural services at the Macon Middle School project. So after we reviewed this report and met the liaison committees, we decided let's move forward with these renovations at the Macon Middle School. So upon that, we received 5 responses to this request for qualifications that were submitted to the county on September 23rd of 2019. All architects were evaluated and scored by school system and county representatives based on their qualifications. On October 8th of 2019, Mr. Gibbs informed the Macon County Board of Commissioners that the 7-member selection committee, comprised of Terry Bell, Todd Gibbs, Fred Goldsmith, Tracy Talent, Jack Morgan, Gary Shields, and Scott Maslin, unanimously recommended SGA Narmore Wright to serve as the project architect to move forward with contract negotiations. So in October of 8th of 2019, we started to move forward with SGA Narmore Wright with contract negotiations. And during this time period, there was a lot of discussions with respect to the scope of work. We wanted to be sure that that this scope of work and many of these questions, like the emails regarding the moisture, those were brought up in February, and we discussed these things and what were going to be the most critical issues that needed to be addressed. That's what we felt like would be pertinent to this renovation process. So all this was between October and February, where we were going back and forth with the architect. We had our committee made up of school system representatives and county representatives that were working hand in hand with the architect. And on February 11th, 2020, the Board of Commissioners meeting, the architect came back to us, and reading an excerpt from the minutes here, it says, Mr. Rowland noted that one of the primary takeaways from the board's February 6th, the mid-year budget review, was to obtain answers to a number of questions regarding scope of services at Macon Middle School that were contained in the architectural services contract. And at this time, Mr. Seeley was present at this meeting, and he addressed the questions that were presented by the Board of Commissioners. And at that time, the Board of Commissioners unanimously approved the architectural contract. And between February 11th and June of 2020, we got the scope ready to go. We got everything ready to bid out on this project. And again, that was working the committee made up of school system and county representatives there in those 4 or 5 months after that February 11th meeting when the contract was approved. So we settled on a scope of the project, and at this time, the project was revised. As I said, it was originally put in the capital improvement plan in 2017. It was revised at this time to be $15 million in the capital improvement plan. So the FY20 capital improvement plan will reflect a Macon Middle School renovation project of $15 million rather than $2.7, which was revised by the school board and presented back to the county for incorporation into that document. So in June 2020, there was much uncertainty around the COVID-19 pandemic. You got to keep in mind that was in the probably the height of uncertainty to do with the COVID pandemic. So we had discussions at this time with the architect, again, this committee that was made up of representatives from the school system and the county, about this project. And most importantly, we discussed postponing this project. And the architect informed us, he said, okay, when the plans are 95% complete in August, just before we go into this bid process, it's a clean breaking point. We can sever it right there. We can postpone this project for up to 90 days as was called for in the architect contract. On September 30th, the selection committee met in this commissioner's room, and again, it wasn't a public meeting, it was a meeting of the committee that we had established to go through this process with each other. We met here to discuss the final plans that the architect presented to us, as well as the future of moving this project forward. And at this time, there was much discussion on how important this was and how that the renovation project, that it was important that we continue moving forward regardless of the economic uncertainty. So at this point, we decided to put this project out to bid. On October 13th of 2020, the Board of Commissioners unanimously approved a pre-qualification committee that was tasked with, it was 4 members of the county and 4 members of the school system, that was tasked with the architect plans that we put out to review when those contractors submitted the plans back. Before we even submitted the plans out, we wanted to look at all contractors who were interested in bidding. There were 6 of them. This pre-qualification committee looked at each one of these contractors to make sure that each of them could be pre-qualified to do the type of critical renovations that were needed at the Macon Middle School. So on October 13th, the Board of Commissioners approved this committee, and the committee again was made up of 4 county representatives and 4 school system representatives. On December 10th, the pre-qualification committee qualified all 6 construction firms that had submitted interest in this project. So at the point that these contractors had submitted and said, hey, we're interested, and we pre-qualified them, that's looking at the projects they've completed, the size of the projects, the qualifications of each member of the firm, we released the bids. And on January 4th, we had the pre-bid meeting. So on January 12th of 2021, we approved our findings resolution to submit to the Local Government Commission. We set a public hearing date. We presented and discussed bank loans versus bond issuance. Our financial advisors were here. We approved the interlocal agreement between the Macon County and the schools. And February 9th, we held that public hearing. We received final approval of the financing terms and documents, and we awarded the construction bid to New Atlantic Contracting. And that, of course, is contingent upon LGC approval and our successful closing of the loan. And most recently, on February 22nd, the resolution approved by the school board affirming their determination to carry out the project in cooperation with the county. So that's just a brief, timeline that I tried to put together today to bring some perspective and like I say, we have a great working relationship, like it's been mentioned here today, and there's a lot of people that have spent a lot of time here. And again, it's not up to any of the administrative staff at the county or the school level to weigh in on the merits of either direction that this board should decide to take. But I feel like it is our responsibility to kind of lay out to you what has led up to this project and kind of the steps that we went through in doing it. It's not something we started working on last month. It's not something, it's something that was identified by the Board of Education in 2017. We put it into our capital planning documents, and we, with full cooperation and approval at each step of the way by both of the Board of Commissioners and the Board of Education, we've been able to get this project here to where it is today. And I've heard some mention of postponing it. And Lori, that is one reason that this special meeting was called today, is because time is of the essence. As you'll recall, we decided to issue bonds for this project, and March 1st will be the date that we issue our position statement for these bonds that we
Preliminary official statement.
Yes, for these bonds, which we will be we'll be getting them, we'll be issuing them on March 8th.
Selling the bonds March 8th,
So.
looking to close the loan March 25th, and LGC approvals March 2nd. And the construction bids expire April 2nd.
So if we postpone this project today, that LGC meeting that's on March 2nd, all that stuff will have to be moved back a month, which will then make our construction bids lapse, which will, the bids are no good anymore at that point. So that is why it is critical that, again, that's why we call this special meeting today, that we decide a path to take from here, because if we don't, we will jeopardize this project being able to be carried out.
And when you spend $1 million already.
Yes, roughly $1 million. And that again goes to, architect fees, our fees for our bond counsel, financial advisors, and everyone, that has been involved in the course of planning and getting this project to where it is today. But again, that's just, I wanted to give you a timeline just to, there were questions. We have had questions when developing the scope of this project. We've had questions throughout, but it was questions that, as you saw and is reflected in the minutes, that, many of these we've discussed, and the architect was here to discuss them with us. We were aware, as well as the school board.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, can I correct a couple of things?
Sure.
I'm not trying to be disagreeable, but some of the figures we just heard, I'm not quite sure were exact. The 2.7 million, and I may look back at Tracy as I talk and see comparison. 2.7 million figure we first heard about was simply a quote on the HVAC system at the Macon Middle School at that point in time. It was not for the renovation of the facility as a whole. You couldn't do what we're talking about doing for 2.7, so that's where that figure came from. In the interim, if you don't mind, Ms. Higgins, I'll answer your question. At the beginning, when we first started talking about some plans, the very thing that Mr. Young is talking about was one of the alternatives we discussed in the liaison meetings about combining our facilities. Of course, we also had several discussions about building on site where we're at now. I think our architects looked at doing that, where you build while school's going on. And of course, then we also found several sites. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Baldwin, one with about 7 or 8 sites upon the request of the board of commissioners for possible school sites for a high school. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we feel like during the discussion there have been some alternatives discussed as we move forward to where we're at now. Does that make sense? So I think as far as the plan goes, we're well aware, as you're talking about, the need. We're talking about a very expensive project, so we're talking about a huge investment by the county commissioners as far as maintaining our school system. But I guess I just wanted to say that this has been an ongoing process. And I'll end by saying, as we said, we appreciate what Josh has done. As we said, actually one of the good things we talked about earlier. But to clarify, we've been working with commissioners, and whenever we were asked to step up and do like, would we vote for to go for the RFQ and those type of things, we have done so, trying to help expedite and move forward based on the direction that we felt like the commissioners wanted, that felt like what they felt, based on our meetings with liaisons, what they felt was the best path as far as reaching. And then the final thing I'm going to address was, at our last meeting, I think the document you were talking about were about some of the issues. That was a statement that actually we had gotten from the architects about with the plan, with where we're heading, that was still some concerns. And so the document you were talking about, that was part of what we received from commissioners during our previous liaison meetings. So hopefully that clarifies a couple of things for you. I'll be glad to answer any questions about what I just said.
And this is an improvement to the overall school system.
Oh, yeah.
But it's piecemeal.
Right.
Bad day.
Right. And please understand what I'm saying. We are not going to step in. It's not our job to tell y'all what to do. That's not how it works. We're here to help be a part of the process. When you ask us for opinions, we're very appreciative that you do so. But obviously that final decision, as far as the money you're going to spend and the final plan, is a decision made by the Board of Commissioners, not by the Board of Education.
We're the ones that has to sell it to the taxpayers.
Exactly. You're the ones that have to answer the questions after you've made your choices and do the things that you have to do. So I like Mr. Tate's comment about Commissioner Anguish. Trust me, we don't have a fraction of what you do at the Board of Education, so that's a heck of a good term to describe what goes on, I'm sure, with what y'all attempt to do to the best. So, like I said, our final involvement was just what we said. We're not trying to say we feel like, we're not saying this is what we want you to do, this is not what we should, blah, blah. We're just simply saying we're here to listen. Mr. Young asked, would we support an extension if that's what y'all chose to do? And our answer is we would most certainly do that. So, having said that, I'll shut up now.
Other than the loss of time, money into the planning where we're at right now, that building and the high school's not gonna fall down next week, is it?
It's not, but I think when we were talking, to answer your question, I expressed this to Josh, and we were talking about, if we do delay, depending on the length of time of delay, there's gonna have to be some things done to that building. Whether we keep it for a while or what, because bluntly, there's some things going on, like Tracy's talking about, in the foundation, the water in downstairs, with the guttering system, it's not gonna get better. So you'd have to do some things regardless. In addition, if you postpone it very long, just to simply preserve that building where it gets to the state where it's just not usable whatsoever for anything in the future.
What Mr. Breedlove is talking about there is exactly when I refer to bleeding out.
Right.
You're bleeding out. I've got a feeling, and I mean, Tracy, you know, has the health department been in that building?
Not that I know of, I've not seen it
Making an
before.
evaluation?
Not in the basement, only for our kitchen facilities is what
Yeah,
they're
only
doing.
in the-
But have they done a walkthrough to see,
Not that we're aware of, no.
No, they don't do school facilities other than
Right.
food service.
Correct.
All right,
One more comment. I could explain to the people that I represent that I voted to lose $1 million as to spend 10 or 12 million and still wind up with issues. And there's some red flags been raised from these reports that I've not been involved in the school liaison. We can't attend school board and county commissioner liaison meetings because we have 2 liaisons.
Right.
3 county commissioners can't meet anywhere without conflict or, so
We're the same.
I've not been privy to a lot of the discussions, so I think there's some big red flags raised here.
I understand.
I don't like the word Band-Aid for $10 million in the building. I would hope that's getting more along the lines of a plastic surgeon. But anyway, just from my understanding in response to you, Paul, I've made that into a joke, of course, but I think, and from my understanding from digging into it, is that it's a lot more than just a Band-Aid. I mean, the architect, Derek, what did you say earlier, is going to give us, he's projecting 20 to 25 years on this building. I don't think it's an optimum position by any means, but my stomach is in an absolute knot right now over this, and I was trying to think about, I felt this feeling before, and I think it reminds me when my kid was about, trying not to well up in tears, but was about 3 years old and he was wanting a toy and I couldn't afford it. And it's a similar situation with this. Yeah, I want this new high school. I want that football field. I want it. But how do we afford it? How do we pay for it? I feel like we always look for reasons not to do things. What if we took the time to look for reasons for why we should do it, how we can do it, instead of why we shouldn't do it? It's painful. I really don't know which way to go with this. I want to get this school fixed. I want to get these repairs made. I feel like 10 million is a lot more than a Band-Aid. But at the same time, I don't want to take Josh's exuberance that he's putting into this, and I don't want to pull. I don't want to pull the reins back on him when he's got something he's running with a good idea. So I'm tough. I'm torn. I really am on this. Derek, what do you think? I'm just trying to run through some numbers in my mind. If we pull, let's just say we pull back for 90 days, I mean, I understand the headache, the paperwork headache. What do you think the cost will be besides the opportunity for contracts to change? Are there any other hidden costs? Are there costs with our financials? Are there costs with the bond market? Is there?
Board, you want to address that?
So if we postpone for 90 days, is that
It's
what
just
you're
an
saying?
idea. I'm just
that-
asking.
yeah.
I don't know. And I think there's we haven't even discussed it, but I think there's a whole liability issue. We've already awarded contracts. I mean, I've signed the documents. Is there a liability issue there?
Just to say, like we mentioned before, we're set Monday, this coming Monday, March 1st, to issue the preliminary official statement. A week from Monday on March 8th, we're scheduled to sell the bonds. You know, the LGC is set to approve March 2nd. The construction bids expire April 2nd. So, let's just say we postpone 90 days from today. I'm a little fuzzy on the LGC approval. I don't know if they could go ahead and approve it Tuesday, knowing that we may be a little delayed. I really don't know the answer to that. But they meet once a month, and it's the first Tuesday of every month. So 90 days, you'd be looking at, you know, April, May, June, early June at their meeting. As far as the bonds, of course, we would have to look to a bond date in June. Yesterday, our true interest cost was 1.77% for the combined financing of Macon Middle School plus the about 11 million of refinancing of current county debt. And that refinancing alone saves us $600,000 over the life of those loans. As far as bids would expire April 2nd. We would have to re-advertise. I'd be surprised if the contractors would hold them for 90 more days. I mean, quite frankly. I mean, you could ask, but I'd be surprised. So you'd have to re-advertise for bids, you know, receive bids again, kind of go through that whole process. Of course, you're subject to price changes. Are these contractors going to have an appetite to go through the bid process again? You know, since we got to this point.
The scope shouldn't change, right? Couldn't they use
No,
the same form?
the scope wouldn't change,
I
but
mean, they could go on percentage differences on materials, but overall labor.
as far as awarding the construction bid, for what we received back from Kim Carpenter, since we haven't actually signed a construction contract, I don't think we'd have liability there. But of course, like's been mentioned, you know, we've already physically paid out $768,000 on this project, $708,000, and that's for the architect. We owe the architect right now probably about $24,000 on the bidding part. There's still $304,000 for construction admin. That's still an unknown. That's not in this $1 million number. You know, do we legally owe that? You know, of course, construction admin normally doesn't happen until construction starts. So do we have a legal obligation to pay that $300,000? I'm not sure at this point. The other roughly $200,000 estimate, as was spoken earlier, you know, we've had to hire underwriters, bond counsel, our financial advisors. We've had Moody's and Standard & Poor's rate these bonds because we decided to go for a public sale. We've received some confidential ratings on those, but we can't share them yet because they haven't been made public. But, you know, all of these things have costs associated with them. So that's what gets us to roughly $1 million, you know, put into this project by the time this is said and done. I think that's all I have. I don't know if y'all have any more questions.
Mr. Chairman, with everything that's being discussed, we'll give an opportunity. You know, what we're going to do is we put a delay here. Nothing's going to get done. We'll come back and have to do the renovations. That's the way I see it. So based on the information given, all the information given and where we're at, where we stand on our timeline, what we've invested as a Macon County taxpayer today, I make a motion that we move ahead with the renovations as voted on unanimously by this board and by the school board. and with one caveat that we authorize the county manager to please go ahead and see what processes we'll have to do the new athletic building at the middle grade school. I'll put that in the form of a motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion?
Now, how we're gonna work that, we don't have numbers on this.
No, that's what my motion said, is to authorize the county manager to proceed to get those numbers.
Just authorize him to do
Just
it.
authorize him to look into that, to see if it's feasible during this same time. We might, what I'm thinking, we might be able to get the same contractor. While he's there, we might get a pretty good price. So, I'm just thinking, that's what I'm thinking.
Are we still kind of just talking right here? Help me with this, Lori. Now, with this project that we're talking about, the renovation to middle school, the contingency money that was left over, we're going to divert that back into the track and some of those, am I right or wrong, or did I dream there?
If there's leftover. I mean,
That's been brought up, but I don't know if you can do that. When
You
you
don't know if
borrow,
you
when
don't
you
know if there'll be any
borrow,
left.
when you borrow money for this project, it has to be spent on this project, or it can be used to pay down the debt. So I don't think we could divert any contingency money, because again, that contingency is built into our total loan package.
Okay.
So I don't know that we'd be allowed to divert it to another project, but we could use it to pay down some on the debt.
Okay.
I know someone had expressed that, and I don't know that I was in on that conversation of the desire to do that, but I don't know if we legally could.
Now, you could include, Mr. Shields, that, just to carry it further, and authorize the county manager to include that. If my motion should pass, let him include that with the construction of a new athletic facility, about a new track at middle grade or wherever we've got a place we can put it. And some of those things that Josh was really concerned with, and that was the track and the football field. Me and Lewis
Needs a
Penland
new
spent a
track
small
and
fortune
needs
on
a-
both.
Needs a new turf field out there.
I think we, before we just start throwing tracks out there, like we need a plan. Like we're going to keep, as Mr. Shields talked about, we're going to keep bringing high school students to the middle school. Like that's what bothers me. We built 3 facilities out there: the high school softball, the high school baseball, and the high school soccer. They're all out there. So now we're going to build the track, but Mr. Shields, we still have the problem that you brought up. Like, are we going to fix the track at the high school? We're going to keep, as Mr. Bill, I mean, there's a creek underneath there. We know we're wasting money, but again, are we just going to authorize money to fix the track at the middle school and say, well, we'll just look into building a high school later and we'll build another track over there? And like, again, I go back to the plan. We need to have these discussions. This is just throwing out crazy thought,
We've not seen no crazy thoughts in about 15 years when it concerns the schools.
I'm very supportive of the plan. Let's, if we go ahead and approve this renovation, educational improvement for drop-offs cliff, you won't hear mention of, we'll still be sitting here 10 years from now talking about what we're going to do at the high school. It's still going to be leaking, it's going to be rotting, it'll fall off. We've addressed the issue at hand today. We're firefighters. When we have a fire, we put it out, wait till the next one. And that's not that's how I'm going to support my opposition. I'm like John Kerry. I voted for it and I'm voting against it.
Yeah, it's a tough one. What concerns me the most about voting to delay this is just that we're delaying something that's inevitable. And I mentioned to Josh when he first asked me about this 2 weeks ago that we might be just a little bit late to the party with this one.
If we
It's
vote,
hard. I just feel like there's just a lot of unknowns. I love the concept. I love the idea, and I know there's a way to make it happen. But is it? There's just a lot of unknowns there. It's how you pay for it. It's how you get the DOT to work. It's how you, and I'm afraid that again, I don't like the word Band-Aid. I feel like 10 million is not worth a Band-Aid, but,
I would like to say one more thing. I mean, we've talked about a lot up here, and just about every person on this board has pretty much admitted that we're putting a Band-Aid out there. It's on record. But
You've not heard me admit that.
secondly, there's a record. I mean, there's a reason. There's a reason a rearview mirror is a whole lot smaller than the windshield. Like Mr. Tate said, we can all find a reason not to do something. I'm not asking to terminate the plans. I'm not asking to scrap it. I'm just saying, let's just stop a minute. Just tap the brakes. Okay, 90 days. If that's what you suggest, let's talk about it again. But by then, we can ask Mr. Rowland and ask Mr. Morgan. We can go out there and see if it even works. Again, we're going to spend $13 million on renovations, and the high school track's still falling apart. Like, again, we're just, hey, yeah, like Mr. Paul says, we're firefighters. You know, and secondly, on this capital improvement plan, it's been bothering me, but we're talking about the jail and everything else, but would we rather build a big, beautiful jail or a big, beautiful high school, middle school? I mean, it's, to me, I think they're hand in hand, cause and effect.
I disagree with that comment, Josh.
I do too.
All right, we'll call the question. I still don't know which one to go.
Can you get through that?
Call the question, Mr. Chairman.
All right, all in favor of proceeding ahead with the renovation, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now, with that being said, I'm the man in the middle here, so I'll be ready to say that I do like Mr. Bill's thoughts that we need to get rolling with some improvements to the athletic facilities at Macon Middle School. I'd love to see that field turf. I'd love to see the track repaired. I'd love to see the facilities put in out there. I'm also going to give Josh my word if he doesn't kick me in the shin here in a minute and step on me. But, I will give you my word. My background is in land planning, and I am going to move forward with helping you keep your enthusiasms, and I will help you solve the problem and how we're going to move this forward. And if it costs us, we're looking at a $100 million project, and if this 10 million renovation is 10% of that problem, then so be it. If you can point at me down the road and say I made the biggest mistake ever and that cost the county $10 million. But I feel like we're delaying an inevitable here, but I am ready to move forward, and I'm giving you my word on it here, man. And I know, like I say, you're not happy with me now, and that hurts me too. So,
Mr. Chairman, I don't think you finished the vote.
all in favor, signify by saying aye. We had 3 ayes. Opposed?
Aye.
There you go.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
No motion to adjourn.